We start with, hey, welcome to Spin Out, winner Dave, and we kind
I'm
of,
Winner.
your winner.
And we're both here to demystify all things building an emerging investment firm. So, on today's episode, we're going to continue from the last episode where we were talking about AI tools applied across four big categories: value add, back office, investing, and fundraising. I think we're going to dive deeper on today's episode into fundraising.
Yeah, I think that's a helpful framework, that four part. And so the focus today of fundraising, what we wanted to do was take some questions from our audience. So we've got a couple of semi-anonymized questions from friends and family of the Coolwater community about AI and how we're integrating it in. And we're going to go through them, have a conversation from each of our respective points of view. So let's start with the first question. Winner, we got John from San Francisco, who's a solo GP. And what he wanted to know is specifically regarding fundraising. He's now getting questions about AI, and he's just curious what LPs really want to hear and where should he start now that he's out fundraising and people are talking about AI.
Yes, from the LP perspective, where do they want you to spend time? As an LP myself, I'd want you to be spending time investing. So when you're using AI tools for fundraising, that's just saving you time, right? I think, as long as I can remember, communications has been front and center. What is communications, right? It's talking about what you're doing, why you're doing it, right? It's building the LP's perspective on you, the GP, giving them confidence that you're a great investor. While fundraising is fundamentally about relationships, I think, in tandem, the AI tools being used in fundraising are fundamentally about strengthening those relationships. That's where I'm seeing the best GPs tinkering and trying to figure out, okay, what are the tools I'm going to use to expedite fundraising, to strengthen relationships, to enhance communications. And yeah, there's some really good CRMs, there's some really good note takers, there's some really good kind of project management tools being used to simplify the fundraising process. Excited to dive a little bit deeper here.
So, all right, breaking it down, there's the initial outreach, prospecting, figuring out who are people you want to go talk to. And I think there's some good data tools. CRMs are definitely one we're going to dive into in a second. But then you've also got in the meeting and then follow ups. That's a whole process and system. And we know a lot of people are using AI to get better and faster at that. I think generally LPs are curious. They want to see GPs using these tools, especially if you're investing in AI. I mean, if you're investing in AI, you need to be literate in the tools themselves. Doesn't mean you need to be vibe coding every part of your fund infrastructure, but LPs want to know that you're not just reading somebody else's blog, but that you fundamentally understand how to use these tools. And fundraising is a great way for GPs to get into some of the marketing focused tools, the generative AI and content generating tools, the CRM tools, which are enriching data. I know a bunch of firms that use a couple of different CRMs, and I'm sure at Coolwater, there's probably 3 or 4 different represented in each cohort of people like a certain style or a certain type of enriched data. The tools that I'm most commonly seeing are things like Adio and Affinity. I don't know, Winner, what are you commonly seeing amongst the GPs you engage with?
Yeah, from the CRM perspective, I'm seeing those. I'm seeing HubSpot, I'm seeing Rings.ai, I'm seeing integrations into the email you're using that just like help with flow and kind of inbox management, right? Like you're tracking a lot of outbounds. I think that the connective tissue is what can you use AI for an existing process with? So sourcing LPs. How are you using AI to better source LPs, or again to better track LPs as you run a big fundraising process? So once you get to a couple of dozen of outreaches in the beginning of your fundraising process, like it becomes hard to kind of track it. It's still a very manual process, right? It's like the old,
Mhm.
reference where a lot of businesses are kind of run on Excel, and a lot of startups kind of address that. Well, a lot of these traditional businesses run on Excel, and therefore, like I'm replacing that. So I think there's a lot of that going on, which is GPs are trying to figure out, okay, great, I've got these lists, right? Someone posts on LinkedIn, hey, I've got this list of 500 family offices. If you post like this word, you get sent that list. There's a lot of like outreach campaigns still, right? You're just trying to build top of funnel. I think the cool thing that like people are using AI for now is, you know, qualifying that list very quickly, getting to a point where it's like, you're using AI to kind of, take that 500 list down to 50. So your outreach is, from day zero, day one, like much more qualified and much more higher likelihood. It's just a matter of like, where do you spend your time? And then the dynamic of a meeting has changed. So maybe you take the first or second meeting virtually. Maybe you have an AI enabled note taker. That's kind of
Can
like,
I ask, how do you feel about the AI enabled note takers? Are you pro? Do you use them? Are you pro them?
I'm pro them. I think like if you have a, IT compliance team, they're not going to be pro, at least from my experience. Like they're going to push back. I don't think you fully know where the data is going. You're relying on that startup that's offering this tool to, help protect that data. And so it's very convenient, changes the meeting dynamic in the beginning. Like, are you okay with having this third party tool? I do think it's nice to at least ask, like it's at the indication of respect for the person across from you. And so that's up to you to determine whether or not it's right for you. But what it does do, it allows you to track notes more clearly, does make you more present, and it can actually serve up kind of meeting synopses and kind of next steps very efficiently. So
Yeah.
it's moving that process forward, like where what would take you, minutes or hours to kind of debrief and figure out, okay, what's the next step? A lot of additional critical thinking. It's pushing you into, again, the relationship building piece, the just working on kind of the like clear follow-ups much faster. And I think that's creating faster cycles on the fundraising side.
I agree, Winner. I'm seeing AI used to better qualify prospects and definitely to manage the individual follow up tasks better. But I think one of the really interesting cases is when you can bring in this enriched data and when you can query the LLM in real time to get a better understanding of who you're sitting across the table from. And if it's a principal of a family office, their investing thesis is going to be heavily influenced by their background and what's important to them. And AI and your CRM need to be a tool to help you research that and really tie in your value proposition to who you're talking to because it might activate differently with each LP.
That's easier than ever. Very important.
Let's move on to our second question. It's a little bit more specific, but on this same theme. We got Paul from Miami is curious about reporting and comms in general. How is AI changing the relationship between GPs and LPs? And is this a big factor in today's reporting and comms and maybe what will look like in the future?
I think if you ask most LPs as an emerging GP, they'll give you the advice, create some reporting mechanism. Let me know what you're up to. And again, what is an LP trying to do? They're trying to build an opinion on you as a, fundraiser, as a fund manager, as an investor. They're trying to build conviction. I think the advice from an LP has been improve reporting, improve your communications, create more consistent communications. AI is making that easier than ever. And it's almost to the point where I've never received more newsletters on a daily, weekly basis. I think from where the pendulum was 10 years ago to where it is today, I can tell a lot of these emerging GPs are using these tools. And I think a lot of LPs that are starting to get fatigued. So now, like, what does that mean? Even though it's easier than ever to report, I think you have to be as scrutinous and as like high discretionary than ever. What are the KPIs of your firm? Are you communicating that? Like, it's really easy to write a story now, but LPs don't have more time. They just are being reported to more. They have more information to kind of parse through. Again, it comes back to signal and the noise. Like, how do you stand out, right? That's an important, I think the judgment call that a GP has to make.
And I would say too, this is the thing I've experienced personally and seen in the marketplace. There's generally two types of people that go after first adopting. Let's use AI and fundraising as this example. There's people that are going to go super deep, very, very fast. You might see a one person solo GP that feels like and reports like and communicates like a much bigger team because their generative AI skills are really strong and they've built awesome automations and now they're even building agents. And so I do know, some 1 or 2 or 3 person firms that act like a 10 or 12 or 15 person firm in the volume of work they're able to do because of AI. So for a very small team to like jump everybody else, that's huge. Then I'm also seeing people engage their audiences in a different way. So you're seeing the same community effect, but now AI is bringing in different people and giving them an opportunity to participate in these conversations. So you're just kind of increasing the community size because people can engage in different manners.
I was going to kind of switch gears a little bit there, but it brought up a thing where who do you want to be known to, right? Like communications, like you're building a brand vis-a-vis the LP. And there's some people who are, to your point, like they're going super deep on all AI tools. Everything they do is like they're trying to build AI native for their firm. So those are the people where LPs are like, wow, this person, because everything I see them doing is AI driven, they must be like experts in AI. So that's like one brand I think of GP right now, where it's like, okay, you're doing everything in AI, you must be smart, right? But does that make you a better investor? TBD. The other one is like, I think what you mentioned, which was like using tools to punch above your weight. So, I used to be a 3-person team and now I'm still a 3-person team, but I'm doing the work of a 10-person team. I think that's where LPs, I'm seeing care, especially if it's done to like, again, button up your firm where you're just better run. So the communications are better, the KPIs tracking's better, the data tracking, like the data reporting, all like if you're doing that with an LP, that is very positive. So that's another brand though, where you're using the tools to be a better version of yourself. Like you don't need to be like the AI guru, but you're using it to like effectively run your firm. And then I think, there's other people that just like are AI investors, but they're not necessarily like using the AI tools for everything or the AI tools effectively at their firm yet, right? But they're very good at understanding how to invest into AI tools. Maybe you're all three of those, right? But it feels like there's kind of distinct brands across the GP community of where you see certain GPs kind of leaning in or leaning out.
And I think the way to think about this too is from an operator's point of view, agentic AI and the ability to take on mundane routine tasks in known rule spaces, think tax and accounting. There's a lot of already AI in the mix already. QuickBooks and Xero and Carta and all these other firms, they are leveraging machine learning and AI now and have been for a while and will. So there's the opportunity for you to kind of partner with a big firm that's already using it, and whether that's accounting or generative AI, those exist. But I think what I'm kind of interested in is there's these two types of GPs. There's some that are building on, I'm just going to pick one, like Lovable Now, and they're building tools specific to suit specific use cases. And that's really interesting. But then you're seeing others that their strategy is much more of the buy, build, or borrow. They're in the buy or borrow sections, and they're just leveraging the tools that are coming to market from super experienced teams that are building them. And then they're kind of figuring out the workflows inside their own firm. And I think that's probably where I would want to start is not necessarily vibe coding my own fund admin. I don't want to do that, but I'd be really interested in learning about how HubSpot's AI can help me build better relationships with my LPs because I just don't have time to like learn how to be a good product manager of all these other tools. I need to delegate and move fast and rely on some of the other software tools out there.
Great. Let's move on to question 3.
All right. So last question we've got. This is from Stephanie in Oakland. It's a quick one. I think the idea here is there's a lot of stuff happening in our firm around AI, and their small team seems very informal right now. People are using AI and doing kind of different things with it. Should they have an AI policy, and like what does even an AI policy look like?
What do you mean by an AI policy?
I think from the early initial conversation, I think policy is too big. But let's take for instance, you got in a typical investment firm, you may have a written information security policy, you might have your AML KYC policy, just a set of rules or guidelines, guardrails for how to handle some situations. And I think you either need to amend your written information security policy, just, hey, here's how we are going to use AI inside the firm. Here's certain documents that we are or not going to allow to be uploaded into a public model, or vice versa. We're going to build and maintain our own model internally, but it's just you're kind of establishing the initial rules for everybody on the team at a very high level, but it needs some kind of guardrails to prevent you being like Twitter famous for doing something really stupid.
Yeah.
And I think that's out there right now.
That's a fascinating point and something to start thinking about, especially if you're building a data room and you're already going to have some of these other policies in there. I mean, what's important for the LP? Data protection, right? Confidentiality. Again, to the point of why an IT compliance team doesn't want you to use an AI note taker. Where's the data going? How is it being used? Do you even know, right? Like, what's your, you know, relationship agreement contract, with some of these AI tools you're using? You don't want to be on the wrong end of that.
There's a company here in DC that what they're selling, and I think the audience is interesting, but to HIPAA controlled data sources and to government data sources, where if you're trying to work with the data and it's classified, you can't just upload that to ChatGPT. And so they've had to build companies that partition and provide safe sandboxes on top of public models to do some of these already known kind of difficult data type workflows and processes in medical and in government. And I think something similar will probably exist for investment management. I mean, the information you have about your LPs is definitely covered by privacy policies, confidentiality statements, side letters in some cases. We probably should default think of our data like doctors think about HIPAA data. and then start from there and figure out from there. But at least you start from a safe spot of protecting your LP's data. That's probably the best place to start in my mind.
All right, let's transition to our Did You See portion of the episode. Some of us might have seen this, but in late July, the House passed the Equal Opportunity for All Investors Act of 2025, right? And Michael Huseby at the Investments Lawyer posted a breakdown,
Friend of the firm.
of exactly what this legislation would do. So it would expand the definition of accredited investor to include people who pass a free financial sophistication test.
That's huge.
This is
That's
something
huge.
that people have been requesting for years. And so what does this mean?
Well, I think it means a lot more LPs available for GPs. And I think it also gives GPs another opportunity to make a different type of funding vehicle to meet a different type of need from different investors, right? I don't think we know exactly what it's going to be, but it's definitely going to be more LPs.
So accredited investor, for those who don't know, right, it's defined by like how much income you make and what your net worth is as an individual or a married couple. What this rule does is it allows more people, if they haven't met that wealth hurdle, to become accredited investors if they're sophisticated. So if you pair that with 506c, for example, like the ability to broadly solicit a private offering, you can now market, if you're 506c, market your fund more publicly, and those inbounds could qualify if they're passing this free test. So it's good news. It's like more access to capital for emerging fund managers.
I think this will be good. It's right now, it's just passed the House. It's still probably going to change a little bit before it becomes final law. But this continues on in the vein that we've seen over the last 10 plus years. 2017, we had a change to some of these rules, the Investment Company Act, Investment Management Act, that allowed for broadening out. They created 506c. I think this is the next step. And it's ultimately moving the private markets from a place where only a select few could participate to it's broader, and you couple that with AI, and I think you're going to see a lot more matching of non-traditional GPs and non-traditional LPs, and that is a place for innovation to happen. Submit questions, we will answer them. We'll talk through what matters to you.
Thanks all for joining Spin Out, and we'll see you next time.